Hi, my name is Luke Shipley, and today I will be going over government intervention and how it works with our healthcare systems. In this presentation, we're going to take a look at how healthcare works, why governments intervene, how intervention works, and finally, is this government intervention beneficial? So, how does the Canadian healthcare system work? Canadian healthcare legislation originally stems from the 1867 British North American Act, followed by the 1982 Constitution. However, Canadian Medicare as we know it today was not established until the 1984 Canadian Health Act, or CHA for short. The Canadian Health Act is the overarching government legislature that oversees all health-related decisions and operations. Now, the primary objective of the CHA is enforced by the federal government by transferring funding for this healthcare directly to the provinces. To receive a full allocation of federal healthcare funding, a provincial or territorial health insurance plan must be filed to the government and must meet the 5 pillars of the CHA. These 5 pillars are comprehensiveness, universality, portability, accessibility, and public administration. So, once the provinces and territories have their funding, they must ensure that their health insurance plans provide universal coverage for all medically necessary hospital and physician services for all residents. These plans are fully provincially run, however, they are federally overseen to ensure that those 5 pillars are met. Now, how is all this paid for? This is all paid for through public finance. Public finance is all of the taxes that the government collects and then uses to pay for government initiatives. Social insurance and private finance play a very minuscule role in the funding of our current healthcare system. Now, Canada's public sector is highly regulated. Canada has a non-market-led regulatory approach. This approach emphasizes the collective population and cooperation among organizations over competition, meaning Canada's healthcare system is not really a free market system. Now, we have to ask ourselves, why are governments intervening in these markets? The first reason why governments intervene in markets is market failure. Market failure is the overarching principal economic rationale for why governments intervene in any market. However, demonstrating market failure alone does not justify government intervention. Intervention must also produce an outcome more efficient than the imperfect market that was seen before. So, what constitutes as a functioning market? A market can only function if no single individual or organization has market power. Market power implies an ability to influence the market price. This means that in the healthcare industry, there can be no one major player controlling all of the prices. Second, a well-functioning market requires that both producers and consumers have sufficient information to enable them to make good decisions. Then finally, markets can only survive if there are no externalities. Externalities allocate resources inefficiently due to people making decisions on private benefits and costs, ignoring social costs and benefits. Whenever the private costs of an activity differ from the social cost, an externality arises. This can be seen a lot in the healthcare market, as the social costs and private costs of medicine usually don't add up. Now, we can take a look at our second reason for government intervention. This reason is called equity concerns. A market outcome may be efficient, yet it can still be judged inequitable. Equity is a question of the appropriate distribution of income in society. Now, this issue is political. It's not an economic problem. Economic analysis focuses on how to ensure markets operate efficiently. However, this leaves questions of redistribution to the political realm. What this means is that if a government sees the market redistributing income inefficiently or unfairly to its citizens, it can still step in and intervene. Now that we know the 2 rationales for government intervention, let's take a look at how governments actually intervene. First, I want to take a look at the example of the flu shot. It's common knowledge that being healthier means you're going to be more productive, create more output, and spend more money in the economy. So overall, the government wants you to be healthy. Now, flu shots provide this marginal health benefit for both you and the people around you. The more people get the flu shot, the better. The government wants to stimulate its economy and hopes to have everybody get the flu shot. So, to maximize the efficient level of flu shots, the government is going to subsidize this cost so that more people get it. Now, if that subsidy equals the marginal benefit, the amount of vaccines will increase. Now, using our flu shot example, let's take a look at how government subsidies actually work. If you take a look at the graph on the left here, the black lines represent a classic supply and demand curve. Price meets quantity at equilibrium. However, the quantity of flu shots here is not socially optimal. The government wants to push more of them out to keep the country healthier and to keep operations running more efficiently. So, they want to stimulate demand over to this blue line here. However, to get the demand to this blue line, the price is up here. Someone has to pay that, and it's not going to be the consumer. So, the government ends up paying this difference between demand and supply. Therefore, the people taking the flu shots, us, pay this P3 here, while consuming them at the amount Q2. This creates benefit in society because more people are getting flu shots, people are staying healthier, and overall, the economy is becoming more stimulated. The opposite can be said with a tax. If the government wants to reduce consumption of something, take the blue line, same thing on the left, and impose a tax. However, flu shots, broken legs, those aren't the only things regarding health that the government looks at. Also, consumption of cigarettes, unhealthy foods, obesity. So, on the right here, I'm going to use this graph and take a look at a price floor. This is going to be the demand and supply curves for cigarettes. You can see simple price equals quantity, and society is consuming this much cigarettes. The government doesn't like that. Cigarettes make us unhealthy, they shorten lifespans, and overall they hurt output and the economy. So they impose a price floor. The price floor is this red line here at P2. And the price floor means that the prices must be above it. You cannot go below this line. So, due to the increased price, some people may not be able to pay it. Some people may just not be bothered. Price increases to here, and the quantity consumed now moves to Q2. Overall, less people are consuming cigarettes because they're more expensive, and government intervention successfully did its job. As I mentioned with the cigarettes, government can also impact health in many other ways. Some of these government initiatives can be ESG regulations on businesses, healthier school lunches, banning unsafe foods and drinks, gym and exercise plans for the youth, and even an example like the carbon tax. The other part is schooling. As you can see from this chart, the more educated you are, the more healthy you're going to be. The government highly subsidizes schooling for you in your home province and Canada, and this helps keep people healthy. Now that we know all this, we have to ask ourselves, is government intervention beneficial? Overall, this is a tricky question, and there's no straight answer. Governments are very dynamic. They're always changing their policies, and they have their hands in every aspect of a country, meaning you can't really have one yes or no for everything the government does. So let's first take a look at the positive the government intervention does. People being in good health provides utility for all other aspects of the economy, and the government subsidies help people work. Good health provides benefits, enables them to undertake activities that provide utility. It allows people to work, increasing labor, markets, income, giving people more spending money, and stimulating the economy. And finally, it lets people live longer, enjoying the country, spending more money, yet again, stimulating the economy. Then, schooling and ESG help our country flourish. It helps educate people, create good jobs, and keep people healthy. Canada subsidizing the health industry creates a large benefit for both the economy and society. Now, let's look at the negative. There's few issues in Canada right now that are less hotly debated than the wait times for healthcare. There's pretty general consensus that these wait times are too long. So, in my opinion, the Canadian government needs to deregulate their private sector. However, they do still need to keep their public sector open and equitable for the rest of society. I think Canada's hindering their own economy by using their non-market led regulatory approach. What this would mean is that Canada would allow private healthcare companies to come in. Therefore, the people who can't afford it and want that sort of thing can go buy those plans. This would get people out of the logjam of the public sector because they're using their private. Then the people waiting in the public sector can still use these public services, and it would also speed things up due to the now switched private people not being there. Also, all these private companies will bring a lot of revenue to Canada. All of the taxes, income taxes, business taxes would really help stimulate the economy. As you can see, healthcare is a very complex issue and will likely be debated for the rest of time. However, this was my take on the matter, and thank you very much for watching.